Alright, so about a week ago, they tried to introduce new sentencing guidelines, which would have benefited minorities. They tried to come up with a pre-sentencing report, which would have taken everything like culture, race, religion, everything about the individual into consideration before issuing the sentence. And of course, that would be unjust. But this, of course, is a two-tier system. But anyway, guys, let's get straight into the debate.
Mood said that the proposals, this differential treatment is unacceptable. I said that in the link. Equality before the law is the backbone of public confidence in our justice system. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? We need to stick to what the law says and keep it fair.
Yeah, it makes sense in theory, but I think that we are living in something that somebody can only call insanity. The fact is, for many, many years, we've known that the justice system isn't very just, especially towards vulnerable, marginalised communities. So we mentioned about ethnicity and religion, but it goes beyond that. If you think about the fact that pregnant women are also being given prison sentences as well, and that doesn't make any sense to me. If we're really looking at prison to be rehabilitative and not punitive, we're actually finding that we're seeing more punitive measures than anything else. We need community, we need funding within the community so we can see these changes. And if people are going to be sentenced, then can we see three-dimensional people instead of just one-dimensional sort of criminals?
Yeah, I know. It's life, isn't it? Things are complex. Things are three-dimensional. People have backstories. These things are relevant when we're sentencing people.
So let's just be clear. Both main political parties oppose this. 72% of the public, according to a YouGov poll, oppose this, and the majority of ethnic minorities oppose this. So when we're talking about discrimination and disparities within the justice system, the overwhelming majority of the public do not believe that this is the right approach, including ethnic minorities. When it comes to some of the things that Kelechi just described, there's a big difference between circumstance and an identity category. Someone that has a particular circumstance, such as being a carer for a young person or an elderly person, a pregnant individual.
Well, let's keep it on ethnicity and religion.
But when it comes to ethnicity, that's an extremely blunt instrument. You are saying that solely because of your race, that by definition means that you are a victim or have a harder time. That's actually not true. We need to look at the reasons why certain disparities exist, and to just assume because someone has a particular racial background or religion that means that they should be treated differently by the justice system. That is completely upending equality under the law, which I think is the best way to achieve fairness.
Quickly,
because this is exactly the problem. Actually, if you even look at the Lamy Review itself, it said that when it came to sexual offences, there was no disparity. It actually said that when it came to jury trials, there was no disparities, and I actually found that some ethnic minority groups were given lesser sentences for the same crime, such as people from an Indian background and people from a Chinese background. So again, we just say race and minority, assume that there is that they are a victim, and completely remove all of the complexities at play. That's exactly the problem.
But these are individual reports for an individual person, aren't they? We're not saying the blanket.
Everybody should have a pre-sentencing report.
Okay.
Everyone should have, not just particular racial
groups. Also, very quickly, I know you want to get Nick in. If you cherry pick those two things, that's fine. But on drug offences, public order offences, is actually the other way. So we can all play the game of different offences.
Therefore, we should look at the complexity.
To be honest, they already do. The sentencing system is very robust. And I think it's very important that we have a level playing field. We want fairness. That our system isn't perfect. And can I say, the idea of any sort of discrimination or prejudice in our judicial system is wrong, and we need to improve it. But we're not going to improve it by what is proposed. What is proposed, if it went through, if it hadn't been cancelled, in my view, would actually create more prejudice and more discrimination. Because if you have somebody who commits an offence and the starting point is a much lesser sentence, that in itself is discriminatory. That is not the way forward. What we're trying to talk about is just let's have a very fair system. And I think if we train the judges better, if we possibly had a more diverse set of judges, and also, dare I say it, everyone needs to take responsibility for their own behaviour, and we don't want to be paying lip service to justice. So if, for example, in a certain area there is a problem with knife crime, I know that many people feel victimised because they're searched and, stop and search, and this is part of the justice system. We need to target people who are more likely to commit the offences. So it's a way of striving to fairness. I think that...
Guys, not going to pause it too long. The woman that you see here on the, I believe her name's Kelechi or something like that, is shaking her head like, what? How dare he say that? But statistics show that black people are stabbing each other at astronomical rates. You know, statistics don't lie. Black perpetrators of knife crime is so high. I've been on national TV to talk about this. It's a real fact. We don't need to say, oh my gosh, why did you say that? When it's a fact and it needs to be dealt with. If more police were searching black kids for knives, etc., then that is not unjust, because the statistics show that black people are stabbing each other at such high rates.
A case of how we're going to achieve that.
Lots of points there, Nick, and pretty much every one of them, Kelechi's face, and particularly the last one. So let's deal with the judges. Nick was saying more diverse judges, and then the stop. I mean, I don't know what to deal with. Your face just painted a picture. Talk to me about judges. If we have more diverse judges, that's the way we solve the problem.
No, that's not the way we solve the problem at all. We're talking about systems, and people come into systems regardless of their race, colour, whatever. They're coming into the systems, and they have to uphold those systems. And rightly so. You can see in this very same situation, I can look the same way as someone and have very different views to that person. So having more diverse, as it were, judges might not change anything if those people are still going to uphold a white supremacist heteropatriarchal culture. If they also pathologize blackness, because that's what we're really saying if you're talking about, oh, knife crime, you know, the moment you allude to it. But if we look at what Glasgow did as it pertains to knife crime, they treated it as a public health issue as opposed to a criminal issue, and they were able to deal with it. So if you're saying that we can justify stop and search because black people are more likely, or black youth are more likely to be affected by knife crime, but we're not looking at all of the other reasons that this stop and search is actually in place in the first place, and the fact that excessive force is used on black youth, men and boys specifically, when they are stopped and searched, then what are we actually changing?
Again, so actually there are some points that Kelechi said that I agree with. Let's look at the reasons as to why certain people are more likely to be drawn into the system. This particular response has nothing to do with the root causes, and I think that we're not talking about things. So in the public discussion, we've had a lot of talk about male role models. Actually, if you look at black Caribbean households, 68% are lone parent households, compared to just 22% of white British households. Why don't we look at actually the environment in which young people are being grown up in?
I think it's really disrespectful to even try to allude to absent fathers in that situation, because that's also a myth that you're perpetuating.
No, I've given you a concrete statistic. That's a fact.
Can I just finish quickly and then we'll get Kelechi to respond?
Can I interject?
And similarly, the other point in this pre-sentencing is also religion. Well, what on earth? Why should a Muslim individual be treated differently from a Jew or a Christian? Most people would regard that as discrimination.
Kelechi, I want to get the others in, so can you briefly respond to that? I'd probably not, but can you try to briefly respond?
I can try, but it's illogical. So sometimes when you're trying to justify certain things, there are certain myths that we've perpetuated and propagated throughout. It's not a fact. We can pick statistics any way we want to pick them, but it's disingenuous and it's very irresponsible to sit here and ignore a whole system that pathologizes blackness, that criminalizes blackness as a reason to the absent father households that you're speaking about, and you're not actually contextualizing it.
So no one has any personal responsibility.
Everybody has a personal responsibility, but that's not what you're...
Guys, last time I'm going to pause the video just very quickly. She mentions that everybody is criminalizing blackness. But when this man, the gentleman on the TV in the middle, said that more people in power, there needs to be a more diverse representation when handing out sentences, she said, no, we don't need that because they're still going to uphold white supremacy. So what is the alternative? She's not giving any alternatives to what she's saying. She's just saying this is how it is. So how do we fix it? You mentioned Glasgow just very vaguely, but you didn't go into depth on that.
You're talking about. That's what you're talking about, is internalized self-loathing.
Yeah, okay. Nick.
Absolute nonsense.
Okay, Nick.
Sorry, that blackness is not criminalized. It's what people do that is criminalized. And if you happen to be black, a judge will look at everything about you. He will look at the level of culpability. He will look at aggravating features. He will look at matters that make it less serious. And all the matters that we're talking about are put before the judge before he makes a decision as to how you should be sentenced. And if there is some subconscious bias there is an appeal process. So that there is a whole raft of measures to ensure that justice is dealt with fairly. And all in all, it's a pretty good system.
Time is against us. Sorry to interrupt you. How about bail figures then? According to the government data, 19% of white defendants are remanded in custody instead of being granted bail, but that figure rises to 25% with black defendants, 24% with Asian defendants. How can you explain that if there isn't a bias?
I can explain it very simply. You're granted bail, you're refused bail if you're more likely to commit offences on bail, or if you're likely to interfere with the course of justice, or you're likely to abscond. Those are the measures that are considered by the tribunal.
So we're saying white people are less likely to offend?
Yes, that's how the judge will consider it. And if bail is refused...
that's quite a major statement. So you're saying if I was arrested, I'd be more likely to offend?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying... I don't know... If the statistics show that certain ethnic groups are more likely to commit certain offences, or more likely to abscond or interfere with justice, or commit offences whilst on bail, then they will not be granted bail, and that's why bail is refused. Okay. It's nothing to do with their ethnicity. It's to do with the risk that you pose, and that is the point. It's not the colour of your skin.
I mean, I feel like we've sort of had quite a lot of people go... I feel like you're in a position where you can sort of look and judge, and as a prison reform campaigner, you can reflect on some of those things. So, I mean, there are lots of things to reflect on. How do you reflect on what Nick has just said then?
Well, Nick said the quiet part out loud, really. I think that shows the bias within the system, unfortunately, for me. I think for myself, actually... things that we may be able to agree on as part of the panel is I do think every individual should get a pre-sentencing report. I had one. Mine didn't go very well. I was told that I should go to prison and that was that. She didn't see any remorse in me, my probation officer, for whatever reason. Thankfully, the judge disagreed. And I think we all seem to agree on the fact that regardless of anything, you should get the same time, regardless of the crime. But that isn't, unfortunately, the way the world works. And we do live in a world where the Lamy Review pointed out that we have the bias issue. And you even have it from people who are ethnic minorities, who are very unlikely to trust even the own advice their own solicitors are giving them, because they see the justice system as them and us. Now, if that is not an entrenched institutional issue within our society and our justice system, I don't know what is. So I think it comes with prevention, it comes with learning, it comes with education, all of the manner of things. I think what the Sentencing Council are trying to do is a short-term fix, which is you're already going over the mark with people who are ethnic minorities, not white people. So we're going to get you to bear it in mind, and hopefully that might level the playing field ever so slightly. Now, whether that's right or wrong, totally different discussion altogether. But
guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Like, comment and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.